Good afternoon, and welcome once again to Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin. We are coming to you from the studios of the American Guns and why can't I say that? The studios of the American Guns and Glory Network here in Las Vegas, Nevada. This show is about guns-related politics and self-defense issues. You can find the show on our website, firedupwithbobirwin.com, and we post a new show every Thursday around 5 p.m. The audio feed is rebroadcast for radio listeners on Saturdays at noon on the Nevada Talk Network. You can find them on the web and find the stations in the area. It's 10 or 12 stations throughout Nevada now. Questions or comments can be directed to me at bob@firedupmail.com or leave a message on my office recorder. That information should be appearing on your screen about now anyway. This show is a little bit different. This is being taped. It's going to be broadcast on July 5 is when you'll be hearing this. This week's discussion is going to be different. It's about the financial attack on our industry and the left's campaign to destroy our gun industry and our Second Amendment rights that keep us free from crime and tyranny. We'll talk about this as we get through. My guest today is California and Nevada Attorney Donald J. Green. Don, if you would give a bit of your background, we'll get into this thing.
Thank you. Bob, for your listeners and your viewers, my name is Don Green, and I'm an attorney in California and Nevada, primarily based in Nevada, although we have cases in both states. Pertaining to this show and this broadcast in particular, we are actively involved in consultation and actual research and presentation of matters for legislation, court cases involving the taking of weapons, or magazines, parts, the banning of firearms altogether. And we do have some financial considerations, some cases involving finances, the Nevada Department of Taxation, and of course, cases involving denials of either federal firearms licenses by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and or appeals of denial of firearms to the FBI. They can find me at dongreenlaw.com or find the contacts through your website.
You can find him through me. Just send me a note, and I'll send you his current address if you didn't get it. But this story was forwarded to me by the National Shooting Sports Foundation. That's the group that puts on the SHOT shows here in Las Vegas, and is the arm of the industry that represents gun manufacturers and distributors. The NRA represents shooters and shooting sports and so forth. The distributors, manufacturers are represented by the National Shooting Sports Foundation. This story came from the Associated Press. A lady named Lisa Marie Payne reported it on 6/24 of this year, just recently. It starts out talking about a fellow named Gary Ramsey. He has a fledgling gun-making business that he is that's taking off pretty well for him, and he's offering some of his handguns on the web, on his website for sale. This didn't sit well with the company he used to process his payments on credit cards, and they informed him because of that, they're dropping his account. Another credit card processor told him the same thing. They would not do business with him. The reason, his business was making firearms, and that violates their business policies. In the wake of high-profile mass shootings, corporate America has been taking a stand against the firearms industry amid lack of action by lawmakers on gun control. Payment processing firms are limiting transactions. Bank of America stopped providing financing to companies that make AR-style rifles, and retailers like Walmart and Dick's Sporting Goods imposed age restrictions on gun purchases. The moves are lauded by the gun safety, quote, advocates, but criticized by the gun industry as they view them as a backhanded way to stop the gun industry from functioning and prevent people from having their right to have a firearm for self-defense. If a few banks say, no, we're not going to give loans to gun dealers and gun manufacturers, all of a sudden the industry is threatened, and the Second Amendment doesn't mean much if there are no guns around, said Michael Hammond. He's the legal counsel for Gun Owners of America. If you can't make guns, you can't sell guns, the Second Amendment doesn't mean much. And I have to say from personal experience here and why this story rang true, when I was operating the gun store in Las Vegas here, now under different management, we got into a argument with Bank of America, and they decided they didn't want to finance some of our transactions anymore. Not at the local level. The local guys were very nice. The corporate level said, well, we don't really like this, and So I picked up my toys and went over to Citibank, not knowing anything about them, and with my accounting guy and the lady who does our bookkeeping, and we sat in the bank with an appointment and set up a checking account and credit card draft capture with them, and they signed everything, and it was great, and we gave them $10,000 to open the account with and so on. And then there was a conversation on the phone, and the guy we were talking to came back and said, I just ran this by corporate, and we're not interested in doing any business with anybody that sells guns. Sorry about that. And he truly was. We would be a big account. We were doing $5-6 million a year at the time. But he said, there's nothing I can do beyond that. Have a nice day. Thanks for contacting us. If the policy changes, I'll let you know. So I have seen this. Nowadays, with online sales, if you can't accept credit cards, you're dead meat. There's no way to operate. People aren't going to mail you cashier's checks. So that's why I'm interested in this. And Don, I know you have a lot of thoughts on this. This is going to be kind of the Don Green show. So
Thank you.
charge.
Thank you. The mainstream media would have the average American believe that the recent events involving firearms are the product of the current political leadership. What I'm going to say today are matters of undeniable fact. The shootings at the school at Sandy Hook, the shootings at the movie theaters in Denver, the shootings at the welfare center in San Bernardino, the tragedy and shootings in October 2017 in Las Vegas, the shooting of people of the gay community in Orlando, the shootings of the children in Florida this year, the children of the students at the shooting at Virginia Tech, the shootings at Dallas, and the shootings in Bishop at the church all have a single fact in common: that the firearms which were used in every single one of these shootings was purchased during the reign of Barack Hussein Obama. That is a matter of undeniable fact. The mainstream media would also have the average American believe that things are so bad. Yesterday, less than 24 hours ago, the Las Vegas Sun reported that they're talking about families confronting dementia and guns. And the major story was of a woman who accidentally shot her husband. The critical point in this story is that the shooting took place on May 16th, 2015, nearly 37 months ago. And it was reported on Wednesday, June 27th, 2018. They're scrambling for stories. And in their story, they say that poor America suffers 96 deaths by firearms each and every day, 7 days a week, 365 days per year. And this is sufficient and enough to warrant the banning of firearms or severely curtailing firearms. According to the National Traffic and Safety Administration, an arm of the federal government which operates independently of just about anything political, from 2007, the one-year period up to June 1st, 2018, from 2017, 1.3 million Americans were killed in car accidents. That's 3,287 people per day are killed by automobiles. But I don't see anybody out there, including Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Wasserman Schultz and Maxine Mad Hatter Waters, clamoring and screaming for the banning or control of automobiles. And in the United States Constitution, there is no right to drive a car. There is no right to own a car. There are some 20 to 50 million people injured a year in the United States in car accidents. The only constitutional provision which talks about a specific property right is the Second Amendment, which says that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Shall not be. Just a month and a half ago, Justice Kennedy, who will be retiring soon, wrote in the bakery case coming out of the 10th Circuit in Denver, that where you've got competing constitutional interests, something's got to give as far as reasonableness. And in that case, it was the baker's legitimate free exercise of his religion not to bake this cake with specific requirements of a male gay couple, because it was against his religion. On the other hand, in the First Amendment, these gay men who were purportedly married said that we have this right because we're gay. What does that have to do with the Second Amendment? Justice Kennedy, writing for the majority, said that we had a competing interest in the same constitutional amendment, because the First Amendment contains that Congress shall pass no law creating any religion nor prohibiting the free exercise thereof, and people have the right of free speech. That's in the First Amendment. In the Second Amendment, there are no competing interests, or there are no competing constitutional prerogatives or requirements. It is strictly limited to the possession and keeping of arms.
Keeping and bearing.
Yes, keeping and
arms,
bearing.
which is the issue we're running into
So-
now with concealed weapons.
As you point out, the mainstream media is working with all of these groups, and when a newspaper, which is, and the Las Vegas Sun is a newspaper contained within the Las Vegas Review-Journal. It used to be an independent paper many, many years ago. And although it may operate independently because of it's still part of the Las Vegas Review-Journal. And they have to reach back 37 months to find a story about a little old lady who shot her husband. Now, and currently pending in the United States House of Representatives, and this is where your viewers and your listeners should take real careful attention. It's called House Resolution HR 507. This is entitled as a bill to regulate the importation, manufacture, possession, sale, or transfer of assault weapons and for other purposes. For the first 17 pages of the 127 pages of this bill, sponsored by well over 50 or 60 Republican House members, for the first 17 pages are nothing but definitions. Then finally it talks about not the regulation or importation or manufacture. It talks about the banning of these weapons, which are contained in the specific definitions, which also include certain pistols. Some members, according to the internet, some members who have sponsored this bill have not read the bill. According to that, they've received summaries, they've received emails, texts, phone calls about what it says. And at the end of this is the name of Nancy Pelosi. These bills are usually presented in alphabetical order. But not to be outdone and to have the last word, I found it interesting that Ms. Pelosi from California has her own name on that. This bill has dramatic consequences for the United States in general, because it would be a national ban. And you have people out there who say it can't be done. And Bob, I've known Bob Irwin here now 30 plus years. And we know that this can be done because President Clinton did it and signed the assault weapons ban around, 96, 97, 98. And it lasted until into the first term of the second George Bush. But this national ban has particular significance to Nevada because in our recent primary election, we had two Democrats who were fighting each other, and just about every other television ad and just about every other word had to do with banning assault rifles, background checks, and bump stocks.
And
3 Bs: banning assault rifles, background checks, and banning bump stocks. And it's as if both of these candidates had never read or considered or been advised about the Nevada Constitution. The Nevada Constitution provides for a very specific possession of firearms for a number of purposes, including self-defense and other lawful purposes. It has been our law some 36 years, having been amended. In Nevada, you need 2 or 3 consecutive elections to amend our Constitution. It first started around 78 or 79, finally passed around 82. And it's never been abrogated since then. So we've got in Nevada in particular a Democratic now candidate who is on this very popular gun control, banning of assault rifles agenda. And we know that there's big money that's going to be flowing into Nevada, just like these people and the, these everywhere neighborhoods. The Bloomberg people from New York spent $20 million for Nevada to get background checks, only for Nevada to be saved by the FBI, which would not process these background checks. And hence, our Attorney General made the absolute correct decision to say that this law cannot be enforced. And now these pundits cannot change the law for at least another 2 years, according to the very text of this. And one thing is if they would have asked me several years ago, what about this bill? And I said, this bill is not going to survive possibly judicial scrutiny for the following reasons: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it didn't. And Bob and I talked, months, probably a year before when this bill first came out. And that's why it's relevant today. Bob and I were talking about what's wrong with this bill, and you and I talked about taxation. And we filed a lawsuit in December of 2016 to challenge the validity of this law because it created an impermissible sales tax, which was deliberately taken out of this law years ago. And the reason why is that Nevadans aren't going to put up with something that's going to cost them more taxes. So what we have here is an assault, as Bob points out, on the financial aspects of manufacturing or selling guns, on the actual possession of firearms, and dredging up 37-month-old stories and putting them in the front page of an insert of a local newspaper on Wednesday, June 27th, 2018. Not to be outdone, as Bob points out as to the financials, that in your article that you talk about Bank of America. Now, a few years ago, or this year, Bank of America and Wells Fargo and several other banks decided that they were not going to finance gun manufacturing and people that sell guns. Yet, at the same time, Bank of America and Wells Fargo, according to the U.S. government, were being investigated for possibly holding the deposits of some $750 million for the People's Republic of Korea, who you may know as North Korea, which were going to be used for possibly weapons manufacturing, weapons of mass destruction, and to support their militaristic, their military-based economy. So, listeners, viewers have to do their own independent research, and it is the value of programs such as this. Regardless of what people may say, these programs are very informative. And for the most part, Bob, I would say that the programming which you have is neutral in the sense of these are the facts and these are our opinions based on what we see. And sometimes we can give additional examples.
Well, it is, because you and I have seen more litigation and more issues go to court and sat there and argued with the judges and the juries and so forth and so on. The financial industry is spending a lot of time trying now to make their own gun control. I don't know if anybody listening saw all this stuff, but Delta and United Airlines stopped giving discount fares to NRA members, which was a long-term contract. Hertz, Alamo, and National Car Rental quit their discount programs for the NRA. They're just, you're aware that Dick's Sporting Goods and their subsidiaries have quit selling guns and took all our AR-15s off the shelf, wouldn't even sell the parts. They made manhole covers out of them. And all of this is going on, and it's all eroding. But this is private companies doing this, saying they're doing something for the good of mankind somehow. A lot of it is over the background checks issue, and it drives me crazy to look at the data that they come up with. They say, 3 million people were prevented from buying a firearm, and therefore we saved, 3 million. Well, each criminal commits 10 crimes before he's caught, so we've stopped 30 million crimes. When somebody fails a background check, it doesn't mean they don't get a gun. They just break into somebody's house and steal one. When criminals are interviewed, they have no trouble getting guns. And that's now become the number one thing when you do a home burglary is you steal guns. And they break into gun shops and steal guns, because guns are immediately sellable on the street. Of those thousands of people who were prevented from getting a firearm from a dealer because they failed the background check, how many of them do you actually believe gave up their criminal career, didn't actually get a gun anyway from some other source? In Australia, where they have these problems, the bad guys build their own. They're actually manufacturing submachine guns in Australia to give to the gangs. The background checks only prevent honest people from paying fees and going through all this rigmarole, and prevents the victims from having guns. There is no data. When you mentioned the assault weapon ban, something we forgot to mention. Did crime go down when assault weapons were banned?
No.
Not at all. When everybody was allowed to carry a gun, Arizona, for instance, if you can legally own a gun, you can carry one concealed. Did the crime rate go up? No. It isn't the guns, it's the criminals. And these idiots are feeding you a line of bull, now letting private companies stop the gun industry in its tracks because they can't get financing. It's the small guys are being driven out of the industry, and it is really tough. And if you don't elect Republicans, pro-gun people, you're not going to have any firearms. This election is so important. Donald Trump's been ragging on it for every rally he goes to, and every rally he goes to, he says the same thing. But he's absolutely right. If we don't elect Republicans to the national offices and to the local offices and to the governorships, they're going to take your guns. Get out and vote.
Look what just happened yesterday with Justice Kennedy announcing his resignation at the end of July, opening up, well, it's going to be a political circus in Washington, but opening up another potential conservative. And the case of which I believe has a great national interest is Duncan versus Becerra. It's currently before the Ninth Circuit. And this is the case in which the Judge Benitez, a federal judge appointed by President Bush, Judge Benitez ruled about a year and a half ago that the California ban on the more than 10-round magazines is unconstitutional because it impairs the right to bear the arm, plus it constitutes an impermissible taking in violation of the Fifth Amendment without just compensation. That case is going before the Ninth Circuit, which is notoriously anti-gun, and if it goes to the U.S. Supreme Court, remember that just last term, the U.S. Supreme Court refused to hear the appeal of this man who tried to get a concealed weapons permit, and it went all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the U.S. Supreme Court declined to hear the case. With yet another perhaps potential conservative judge, someone may join Justice Clarence Thomas, who's been very vociferous and a man who says, look, the Constitution says what it says, and this is how we need to interpret it.
We need judges who interpret the Constitution as it was written, not because of current political trends. If we don't, this election is so important, I couldn't explain it. We'll be back next week talking about this further, and this show will be played on the 5th of July, day after, hence I wore my patriotic stuff today. Don and I are both aware, as this show is being taped, we had another shooting took place. We've got 5 people killed in, anyway, another mass shooting took place. They still don't know whether it's political or not or whatever, but you can bet the Democrats are going to jump on that one too and go, see, if we'd had background checks, if we didn't have high capacity. This guy had a shotgun, apparently. That's how it started in England, and now they can't own pump shotguns. Only double barrels. So all parts for a pump shotgun are illegal. I've gone over that on a couple of shows when I was in England, what happened to me there, but because of that. But we will we'll get into that next week. I thank you so much for listening. If you're not registered to vote, register to vote, whatever state you're in. We got to get this done, or you're going to have no firearms, and the bad guys will still be breaking into your house. What do you do then? Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week. Take care. Have a good evening.
Thank you again, Bob. Okay.